to Kinship Connects, a podcast from SDA Kinship, sharing our stories and our journeys. We invite you to join us, and my name is Floyd Poenitz, and today it is my privilege to speak with Serenity Maldonado. And last time, whenever you're listening to this, last time we were talking and getting the background history of Serenity and how she got to the point where she is today. We were just talking about her interaction with a counselor, Steve, is that correct? Was he a counselor, I believe? Okay.
Social worker, counselor.
Yeah. Social worker, okay. And he was familiar with Southwestern, the university, our Adventist University. So I'm gonna let you take it over from here.
So yeah, our very first session, he said, he asked me, because like I was telling him, from a very young age, I identified as a girl. And he asked me a question. He was like, do you know the difference between, do you know the difference between a drag queen and a person who identifies as a trans woman? And I said, yes, I know the difference. And he was like, okay, tell me the difference. And I was like, the difference is that a person who is a trans queen, a drag queen, they do it for entertainment. A person who's trans, they actually identify with that sex. They identify as being a woman or as being a man.
Right.
So that was the very first question. And then he said, like our later on sessions, that after I answered that question, he had no doubt that I was trans. Like he had the idea, because he says like when he first met me, or even before he met me, and he was reading my history, that he had a gut feeling that I was actually trans, but he wanted to be sure, because with in the time period that I started transitioning for the first time, it was not as common as it is now. I mean, yeah, transitions was out there, but there was just starting getting a voice. I mean, what was that teenager? She has a show, and she's one of the first trans teens to have a TV show. I forget her name, but she was one of the first people who was interviewed, because she started transitioning when I think she was like 3 or 4 years old. She started transitioning, and she was interviewed. And then later on, when she got a little bit older, she started having a show. Mm-hmm. And she was one of the first trans teenagers to have a TV show. And of course, the Caitlyn Jenner, and then Orange is the New Black came out, and trans issues were just getting a voice.
Right.
So since they were just getting a voice, mental health professionals started to, say, oh, we have to, make sure that when a person comes to us with this, that they actually feel like this, like they are 100% certain.
Right.
So I was in counseling for a while. And as part of the process, he said that I had to first socially transition. So that's when I started wearing.
What does that mean, socially transition? What does that term mean?
So socially transitioning means that for me, as a trans woman, I started to wear makeup, girls' clothes, start talking. Well, back then I had a little bit of a deep voice. So start talking more feminine, start wearing girls' clothes, makeup, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So during this time, it was like my senior year in high school. So I was the only trans, well, maybe not the only one, but the only one who was out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was the only one who was out. In high school, before I started transitioning, I hate to say this, but I was just known as the school whore. And the only reason I was known as that is because one of the other gay guys, he was dating a guy who wasn't out,
Mm-hmm.
and he left his boyfriend for me. And just because he left his boyfriend for me, the other gay guy started spreading rumors of me being, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a really good reputation, or yeah. So when I started transitioning, I got in even more bullying, like even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I started transitioning, I started getting attention from this boy. He was one of the Hispanic soccer players, and he started, catcalling me, saying, "Ay, chiquitita, ¿cómo estás, mamacita?" Like, starting with me, and
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Oh, hey, what's up, girl?" And I thought he was just joking, like I didn't really think he was actually interested. But then he started doing more and more, and now in front of his friends. And me, as just coming out of the closet as trans, I was like, wow, I got the attention of a boy. OMG, this is huge.
Right.
So like I was so happy, and I was so like, I got the attention, like, and he just not just wants sex with me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a thing, and he sexually assaulted me at school, and I was a victim of sexual assault, and so I didn't tell anybody, and
Mm-hmm.
I was scared to tell anybody because I was like, I don't want to tell anybody. I just know. So
Because it
I
would get you in trouble.
yeah, probably
Yeah.
most likely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I told my mom, and my older brother was there. My older brother Frank. When I told my mom, oh, I got sexually assaulted at school, my older brother, he was like, oh, that doesn't happen to guys. That doesn't happen. So no. And I'm like, no, it did happen. It did. Like, you're the first people that I'm telling.
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, that was reaction. And then of course I told my good friend, who is my best friend, and she was pissed. She wanted to kill this guy. Like, she was beyond pissed. Like, she was like, you do not mess with my best friend. And she was like, you need to report this. Like, sorry for the term, Serenity, but grow some balls and report this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to report this. This is serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got the courage to, tell somebody. And I told the school, I reported it. And then I finally had a meeting with the principal. Melvin Eckhart or something like that. And my mom was there at the meeting. And I remember we were in his office. And I was telling him what was going on. And he was like, I think you brought this onto yourself.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? He was like, yeah, because you're the one who comes to school in makeup and acting like a woman. So I think you brought this onto yourself.
Well, that's victim shaming. Yeah. Big time.
So I was like, I didn't know what to say. Like, I was just like, just in shock. And my mom didn't say anything either. And she knows English. Like, at this time, she knows English. She understands it. My mom just doesn't speak it because she's more comfortable with Spanish.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but she understands English. So yeah, basically that was what happened. And he asked me, he was like, what would you do if I came to work one day in a dress and heels and makeup? What would you do? And I'm like, To be honest, yes, I would be shocked, but I wouldn't treat you any different than anybody else. Like me, honestly, me personally, I wouldn't treat you any differently than anybody else. That's just me. Yes, I'm gonna be shocked, but I wouldn't treat you any different.
Right.
So that's what happened, and yeah, that's
Wow.
another of the traumas that I suffered.
Yeah.
Like the conversion therapy and then the sexual assault. And I think that's why I stopped transitioning in the first place.
Okay.
My therapist not that long ago, we just started talking about this trauma, and
So at that point, you kind of just said, "Hey, I'm gonna try to forget this part of me and live as a boy."
yeah,
And
because my therapist says that I associated the sexual assault with transitioning. So my
okay.
brain was like, if I stop transitioning, I'll be safe. Nobody's gonna hurt me.
Right. Right.
So that's why she says that. I That's probably the reason why I stopped transitioning, is because
Okay.
my brain was trying to protect me.
Okay.
But yeah, later on, I was still transitioning, and it came to a point in 2021 where I was at Laura Ridge, and they put me on a medication called Topamax, and I felt weird. Like
Mm.
I didn't feel like myself. And I was discharged, even though one of the nurse practitioners there, his name is George, he tried to advocate for me. Because he says, I didn't know this until like years after, but he said that he saw me like that. Like he saw me before I discharged. And he told staff, Serenity is not herself. Like we need to get her to a hospital now because she is not herself. I know Serenity for years now, and this is not her typical self. We need to get her to a hospital. But
Right.
for some reason, they didn't take me to a hospital. So they discharged me, and I just felt weird. I didn't feel like myself. So I went to the ER, to Northeast Methodist Hospital here in San Antonio, and I was there for hours. I think I didn't get discharged until like close to 3 o'clock in the morning, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I got there I want to say I got there like around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I didn't get discharged until almost 3 o'clock in the morning. So, and they just told me, oh, you just need a detox. It's gonna resolve on its own. You're okay. So they discharged me, and my dad says, he's not okay. Why are you discharging him? Like he is not himself. I know my son. He is not himself. You
Mm-hmm.
need to do something. Like he is not himself. Why are you discharging him? And they just said, oh, it's gonna resolve its own. He's fine. So they discharged me. I went back home, and later that night, like maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I couldn't go to the bathroom that is close to my room because I think either my mom or my dad was using the bathroom. So I had to go across the house to go to the bathroom my little brother uses. So I went to the bathroom, and next thing I know, my legs gave out.
Mm.
My legs gave out, and I got scared. I called for my little brother, and my little brother called for my mom, and they had to help me carry me back to my room. So later on that morning, I could sort of walk, like kind of. So I made my way to the living room to have breakfast and to watch TV. So it was not until later that day that I noticed that my whole body was getting out, like little by little. And it came to a point where I couldn't move anything. So I screamed for my dad. I was like, Dad. And my dad came and I was like, I need you to call 911. He called 911. The paramedics legitimately had to lift me up and put me on the stretcher and rush me to the hospital. I don't remember that much from being in the hospital because they say that I was in a semi-coma. I mean, my mom and my dad said that I was sort of talking, like I was in and out, in and out, in and out. But I really don't remember anything after, like, being in the ambulance. Like after being in the ambulance, I don't remember anything. My dad took a picture of me when I was ICU, and I was connected. Like I had a machine breathing for me.
Yeah. Wow.
I was in ICU for months. At this point, the doctors were telling my parents, if you guys are religious, call your pastor, your priest, whatever, and ask them to perform my last rites, because Peter is not going to make it. Everything is failing. Everything, like all his major organs are failing, and he's on life support. Like he can't breathe on his own. See, so that's when my mom, being the prayer warrior that she is, I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for my mom. It's something about moms that God has a soft heart for. Yeah. I mean, God just has a soft spot for moms. So my mom, being the prayer warrior that she is, she says that she refused to accept that fact that the doctor told her that. She refused it because she said, my son is not going to die. So she said that that I asked for the pastor of our church, which is the pastor of our church now. His name is Pastor Quirol. He's Cuban. So he asked me some questions. You repent of your sins and you want to get right with Jesus. And my mom said that. I said yes. He anointed me, and they had a prayer chain, and my parents prayed with the pastor there over me. And then after he anointed me, that's when I started getting better.
Wow.
That's when I started to breathe on my own, and they took me off of life support and they put a trach. I breathe even better because I could breathe on my own, but I couldn't get enough oxygen. So they put me on a trach. There's a scar right here.
Yeah.
And also, I had a feeding tube right here.
Okay.
So yeah, after that,
now this was all because of the medicine that they had given you, or?
Yes. So I had what's called serotonin syndrome. Okay. Which is weird because after this experience, later on, I saw the psychiatrist that put me on it, and she told me serotonin syndrome on Topamax is very, very, very rare. I mean, It's like point something. It's very rare for someone to get serotonin syndrome from Topamax. So you were just the 1% of people who get it. So after, me getting better and started breathing on my own and stuff like that, they transferred me to a nursing home to start physical therapy because since I was in the ICU for a long time, my muscles atrophied and I had to relearn how to walk. So during this time that I was in the nursing home, even before this, I was a huge atheist because after my experience with conversion therapy, I was like, if this is the God that my mom showed me, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything with that God. Like, I don't want anything to do with him. So I was an atheist for a long time, a very long time. And then gradually I dabbled in all religions. I mean, I did, like, I dabbled in all religions. I dabbled in Judaism, Hinduism, Islam. And then finally, I just had a big connection with Buddhism. Just a very big connection. But even though I had a big connection with Buddhism, I also started having interest in a little bit of Mexican witchcraft, because there's this, now it's starting to get even bigger. But in the time that it was like it was during COVID. It was 2020, 2021, that COVID was really bad. And I got an interest on something called La Santa Muerte. La Santa Muerte is a little bit of Mexican witchcraft, but is more of like a Aztec goddess. Is the Aztec goddess of death, but they call it La Santa Muerte because in Mexico, they don't really view death as a sad thing. They view it as something good, something a part of life. Mexico, they have this holiday, most people know it, Dia de los Muertos. That holiday is actually a Aztec holiday that was mixed with Catholicism, because Dia de los Muertos is also what the Catholics call All Souls Day. Yes, something like that. So since the Catholic Church was trying to convert the Aztecs, they said, since they have this holiday that has to do with death and we're celebrating All Souls Day, why don't we just call it Dia de los Muertos and convert the Aztecs? Because they just wanted to do that. So that's how Dia de los Muertos came to be. Dia de los Muertos is honoring your ancestors. So during that holiday, which is October 30th or 20th, 9 to November 2nd.
Okay.
During this time, people go to the cemetery. They clean their members' tombs. They leave the things that they loved in life, because the theory is that your ancestors come from the other side. And during this time is where the spiritual world and the physical world come together.
Okay, yeah.
Your ancestors can come and get the offerings that you leave for them. And this is actually connected with Aztec religion.
Okay.
So this is what they believe. So Santa Muerte is just an Aztec goddess, and it's just started getting popularly in Mexico City, which Mexico City has a very big population of Mexican witchcraft, because in Mexico City there is a Mexican witchcraft market. Like, it's just huge. Like, you can't miss it. It's just, everybody knows about it.
Right.
And you can find anything there. I mean, there's people that do satanic rites there. There's people that heal people. Like, you can find anything there. So Santa Muerte is just something that started getting popularly like during COVID until now. So I started getting interested in this because I was just looking for acceptance.
Right.
I was just looking for a church because I was so connected with being Seventh-day Adventist. But I stopped going to church because I didn't know anything about SDA Kinship. I didn't know any Adventist church that was affirming. So I was just looking for a church. And since I was So I was like, since I can't find a church that will allow me to be me and affirm me, and I can be a member, an active member, I will just stop going to church. Because I found churches that were affirming, but I just couldn't silence my conscience. My conscience was telling me, you know the truth. You know about the Sabbath. You know everything. You know about all this. You can't ignore this. So I was like, I cannot silence my conscience, and I can't find a church that will affirm me and accept me and allow me to be an active member. I would just have nothing to do with Christianity.
Right.
So I started getting involved with Santa Muerte because Santa Muerte, she does not discriminate. She welcomes everybody from any kind of life. Santa Muerte started getting popular with delinquents, with people from prison, people who are drug cartels. That's how she started as, because they would pray to her and she would make sure that the drugs or whatever the case may be would safely go over the border.
So this provided you a space to be yourself and to be accepted, a safe space that you didn't find in the Adventist church.
Yes. So I started researching about Santa Muerte and I started getting involved with it. And this is before I got a serotonin syndrome. So after in the nursing home, I was like, God, what do you want for me? What do you want for me? Because you have saved me so many times, but this time I'm supposed to be dead. I'm supposed to be dead. So what do you want from me? Like, speak to me. What do you want from me? And he was like, I want you to serve me. You've known me since you were a child. You knew that my love never, ever, ever changed for you.
Right.
You know that I love you and accept you just as you are. And that was just big for me, because when I was in conversion therapy, they taught me that God was an angry God and that he was upset with me and that I needed to change, because if I didn't change, I was destined for hell. I remember clearly that the pastor that was doing the conversion therapy, he said that I was so much of a fag that I needed multiple sessions in order to be saved by God.
Wow.
So as God was talking to me in the nursing home, I was like, is this actually you, God? Like, are you telling me all this time I thought it was you that turned your back on me, but it was actually the other way around, that I turned my back on you. Like, what happened? Like, show me what happened. And he was showing me that it was a mixture of the spiritual abuse and the conversion therapy that led me to believe in a God that wasn't God.
Yeah.
And he showed me that he's not an angry God. He's not an angry, distant God. He's a God of love and mercy and forgiveness, and that he wanted me to serve him. And that's when, of course, I started to get a relationship again with God.
Good. Yeah.
And of course, I got discharged from the nursing home, and I walked out of there. It was. I made not a full recovery, because I still have a little bit of a limp. But other than that, I made a quick recovery. But
Wow. I want to jump back just a little bit. In the previous broadcast that we did, you mentioned self-harm. And I don't know if all of our listeners might know what that really means. Can you just tell us a little bit about self-harming, if you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. So self-harming. So a lot of people, especially in the time period that I was doing it, self-harming is a coping skill. A lot of people with mental health issues, especially people in the Hispanic community and the African American community, and some, well, Asian community, of course, but some white communities don't talk about mental health, don't address mental health when they see it.
Mm-hmm.
As that, because it's a part of the culture, a lot of kids, teenagers, mostly girls, but also boys, use self-harming, meaning cutting themselves or hurting themselves physically, as a coping skill to deal with their emotions, because they don't have the tools, the positive coping skills to address their emotions, because they never learned it from the parents, and they're not getting the right help to learn those coping skills. So they evolve to self-harming to cope with the emotions that they're feeling.
Okay.
Self-harming can be from cutting to burning, stuff like that. I went from cutting with razors to burning myself. So
Wow. So you have this emotional hurt that the only way you can put that to the side is to do some physical hurt that takes over that feeling, or is stronger than the emotional, temporarily at least. Is that my understanding correct?
I was going through so much emotional pain that I felt numb.
Right.
And I was so desperate to feel something. I was so desperate to feel something. So when I started cutting myself, I could feel something.
Wow.
So I think that's why I started self-harming in the first place, because I was going through so much emotional pain that I felt numb and I wanted to feel something.
Okay.
And then from there, it just got into a habit to the point where it was just, I got addicted to it.
So it's just like a cigarette or alcohol or something. It's like you become addicted to that feeling, the feeling of feeling something, rather than the numbness of the emotional.
So what happened? I love talking about the brain and stuff like that. I should be a doctor or something, because I love it. So people who self-harm, the natural body's response to pain is to send endorphins. That's the natural body's response to pain. So you can you can feel the pain, but not severe pain. So endorphins, they immediately go to where the pain is, and they produce this chemical. I forget what the name of the chemical is, but it's a chemical in the brain that makes you feel good.
Like oxytocin or something?
Yes, kind of like that. So as a person who cuts, the body's natural response is to release this hormone, and the person who self-harms starts to get addicted to that feeling. So they start self-harming even more and even deeper, so they can get that rush, that adrenaline.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that could land you in the hospital if you've cut too much. Yeah.
It's super dangerous. This coping skill is a negative coping skill, but it's super dangerous.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I said, mental health hasn't been talked about, especially in our church.
Right.
And I think it's so hypocritical of our church, because we're all about the health message. We're all about the health message. And I believe, and LGBTIQ also believe this, that physical, mental, and spiritual things are one and the same. You can't have one without the other. And LGBTIQ has said this.
Yeah.
So I think it's so hypocritical of our church that they didn't start talking about mental health until recently. Like
Yeah,
it's been decades that mental health has been outside and we haven't talked about it. We just said, oh, we just need to pray about it. We need to get closer to Jesus and X, Y, and Z. And we have to pray about it. We don't need professional help. We don't need a therapist. We just need Jesus.
yeah,
Yeah, don't get me started.
yeah. I mean, it's true. We do need Jesus, but
Yeah.
we also have to take physical steps to improve mental health and et cetera. Which also reminds me now, because you talked about praying and conversion therapy within the Adventist Church, you also connected with a change ministry.
Mhm.
Can you tell us just a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of people think that's the answer to the LGBTQ issue.
Yes.
What was your experience?
Yeah. So there's this ministry called Coming Out Ministries. I first heard about them when I was still transitioning. Um, so there's this huge church. It's one of the big churches here in San Antonio. It's called St. Hills, Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's one of the big churches that we have as Seventh-day Adventist. So they started this ministry called Advent Project. Advent Project was a plant-based church it was just from late teens to early 20s. Like
Okay.
the members were late teens, early 20s. Like most of the members were like in their 20s. Some of them were teenagers. But most of them, all the church members, like the church board, were in their early 20s. The Pastor Gabe, I believe he was like in his late 20s, I want to say, but he was the pastor of this church. And I started going to this church because a lady who goes to St. Kills, she used to go to the church that I grew up in. And she's known me since I was yay high. I mean, she knows me since I was born. So she told me about this church and I started going with her to this. Well, she would go to the Spanish church, but she would give me a ride to St. Kills so I could go to Advent Project. So I started going to Advent Project. I loved it because it was a new approach of Adventism, a more modern way of Adventism. They had a different way of worship. They had a different way of preaching. I loved the way that Pastor Gabe preached. I mean, like I could feel like the Holy Spirit using him. Like he is a good preacher. So as I started going to this church, I started getting more involved. And it get to a point where he said that the church board of Advent Project and him had invited Coming Out Ministries to talk to us about the LGBT issue.
Okay.
And I heard Coming Out Ministry, so I thought it was an affirming ministry. That's what I legitimately thought, because I mean, coming out, like I legitimately thought it was an affirming ministry.
A little deceptive there, yeah.
Yeah, I was so excited because like I was like, finally, we're moving forward. We're finally gonna have a space where everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
So I went to that service that that the the board members of, well, Wayne wasn't there. I don't know if Wayne was there, but I know that Michael and Pastor Ron were there. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
Because I know that Michael was there because I talked to him. So I remember going to this service because I took my little brother, because I told them about it.
Yeah.
I told him about it and he was so excited too, because my little brother is an ally.
Okay.
Like he was the first person that I came out to as trans.
Wow.
And his reaction was, "What? You want a fucking cake?" Like, big deal.
Yeah.
That's what his reaction was, and I was so relieved that he was an ally. But yeah, like I told him about it, and he came with me, and we had we had worship service, and then we had the actual service, and that's when I learned that coming out ministries wasn't for me at all.
Wow. Yeah.
So later on, I had a conversation with Michael. I had a conversation with Michael, and we just had a conversation, and we just didn't agree on things. We didn't agree on things, and we just left it at that. Later on, after my experience with serotonin syndrome, I started searching for, like, I know that I knew a ministry of like where I can, sing, and I couldn't remember the ministry. So like I knew that they had a deal with 3ABN because that lady that told me about Advent Project, her husband, I don't know if he worked for 3ABN, but he knows like all about it and stuff like that. And he told me that coming out, I didn't know the name of the ministry. I couldn't remember the ministry, but he said the ministry that went to Advent Project, they have a contract with 3ABN. So I was looking at 3ABN, looking at YouTube, looking, and I finally found a video, and it was Michael and Pastor Ron and one of the other board members who's a girl, I forget her name, and Wayne wasn't there, I don't think, but it was Pastor Ron and Michael. And I remember, and he said, we're part of Coming Out Ministry. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's the name. So I Googled it, and I reached out to Coming Out Ministries. Later on, they got me in touch with somebody. They told me that they were going to get me in touch with somebody. And, excuse me. And I didn't know that somebody, I just was waiting for the phone call. Turned out to be the person that they connect me with is Michael.
Michael Carducci?
Yes, Michael Carducci.
Okay.
So I remember, and he didn't recognize me because at this point, my voice was a lot more deeper. And when he met me, I was on hormones and my voice was a lot more feminine.
Okay.
So I told him about my story, and he was like, I know that I know you. And I was like, yeah, it's me, Serenity. Because I told him my name was Peter. My name is Serenity. I met you at St. Kills when you were invited by Advent Project. And he was like, yes. Yeah, and we just had this whole conversation. And then that's when he started giving me, the inviting me to the meetings, the Zoom meetings, and he told me to share my testimony. So that's how I got involved with Coming Out Ministries.
Okay. Did you find it helpful at all?
I felt like I was an AA, basically. That's how I felt. No, legitimately, that's how I felt, because that's how they experience it. Because like they say that when we have a slip up, and that's the terminology that we use in AA and NA. We have a slip up.
Okay.
And they always said that we have to have a closer relationship with Jesus. We have to pray about our sexual desires. Don't get me wrong, Michael, Pastor Ron, Wayne, all of them are very good people with very good hearts. they have their heart in the right place. They
Mhm.
want to help. It's just that they have a misunderstanding of people who are LGBT. I mean, yes, they were part of the community, but they just socialize, being gay or being LGBTQIA with, being very sexual, like,
Mhm.
hookups and stuff like that,
Right,
and
right.
drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
yeah. And basically, yes, Michael is a sweetheart. He really is. It's just, I think he's just trying to convince himself. I
Mhm.
truly believe that he still struggles with, you know, him being gay. It's just he's just really wanting to convince himself that he wants to be that he can be celibate.
Right.
And to my knowledge, he has been, but who knows? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
to my knowledge, he has been celibate so far.
So their plan or their method to change or to leave the so-called lifestyle of being LGBTQ is mainly to pray, or are there other steps, or what is the
So
message of their plan?
basically, the meetings is like a support group.
Uh-huh. Okay.
The meetings is like full of people who are either wanting or have left the lifestyle.
Okay. Okay.
All these people are either people who were a part of the lifestyle and want to leave, or they're people who were in the lifestyle and already left. And they are targeting people from Adventist schools to Adventist universities. I mean, they go everywhere, all around the world. They go to schools, academies, universities, and I mean, they talk to kids from pre-K to high school and even university. I mean, yes, they have a like lesson plan for people who are like in pre-K, kindergarten, elementary school, but people who are in middle school to high school, that's when they actually get in detail about,
Wow. Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Now, does this include like Zooms where you see the other people, or you're talking one-on-one with Michael?
No, it's a meeting with all people, like
Okay.
people who left from the lifestyle or wanting to leave, and it's international. There's people from Africa. There's people like from all over the world, and
Okay.
sometimes Michael has is the host of the meeting, and he has different people who host the meeting.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good. And then somewhere along the way, you heard about SDA Kinship.
Yes. So as I was going through these meetings, they started, talking about La Sierra University and how they were affirming. And they were saying how this is a sign of the last days.
Mm. Mhm.
How the devil is going to infiltrate our church. And he
Wow.
is doing that's why they started talking about La Sierra. Because when I started going to coming out ministries meetings, that's when La Sierra University was getting more affirming with, having a gay straight alliance, and La Sierra University Church was having people who were, LGBTQ as members, and even I think it was La Sierra no, I was mistaken. It was Hollywood Seventh-day Adventist Church. They had their first trans woman elder.
Yes.
And,
Right.
yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then later on, they started talking about what's that? Andrews University, how they started having a gay straight alliance. And on the university's page, it says it's not to promote the lifestyle. It's more of like information how to not be part of that lifestyle.
Right.
And we actually, in the meetings, had someone who was going to Andrews University and was part of the Gay Straight Alliance. And they told us that in the university's page, it said that they don't promote the lifestyle, but in the group, they do promote the lifestyle.
Okay, so this person was in the Coming Out Ministries meeting, but was part of the group up there at Andrews. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And that's something I want to address in another podcast at some point is, what Coming Out Ministries exposed them a little bit more of what they're teaching and talking about. So time flies by here. But I did want to get to Keene and your experience at Southwestern, if you still have a few minutes to just briefly talk about what it was like to be at Keene. Because Keene is a fairly conservative Adventist university. I went there, so I know.
Conservative is an understatement.
Okay.
I believe that conservative is an understatement. I mean, the church is trying to be more inclusive, but a long way to go. Because there is no doubt. There is no doubt there. There's people that go to Southwestern's Seventh-day Adventist Church that are LGBTQIA, but they're in the closet and they just sit in the back of the church where nobody can see them. And, I mean, they're faithful to keeping the Sabbath and being part of the church, but they're just in the blind's eye.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But anyways, I started going to Southwestern in August. I remember that night before I left, I could not sleep. I was just so excited. I was so excited that I was finally going to college. Well, not my first experience in college, but finally going to study to be a pastor.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was so excited. And I remember before I left or before I started applying to go to Southwestern, I made sure that it was okay with my psychiatrist and with my personal therapist. My therapist, she said, yes, you are mentally stable, but I am concerned because you are going to a conservative Seventh-day Adventist University. And I am concerned that you will be triggered. And either you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt someone else. That's what my concern is. Because you have severe PTSD. And I am just concerned that you're going to be triggered. And that, like I said, she was concerned I was either going to hurt myself or somebody else.
Yeah.
So anyways, she did. I convinced her that that to let me go. I did go. It was the 21st of August, and I thought it was going to be small. I thought everybody already registered and stuff like early on, but it was just full in the gym. And since I have PTSD, and I have to notice every single sound, every person that is around me, it just got to the point where I was just so overwhelmed that I was having a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. Wow.
But God is good, and He got me through that experience. He got me through that experience, and I started classes. As I started classes, my professor for life and teachings of Jesus, he's from Australia. His name is Professor Addy. He's from Australia, and it's his first year in Southwestern. So he has this way of teaching, which I think is really awesome and very modern. He uses, Greek mythology and other religions to prove that Jesus actually lived among us. Because like the Greeks believed that the gods could, live among us. Like they thought that the gods could, actually be incarnate and live among them. So he uses that theory to actually prove that Jesus actually existed, that he actually was incarnate and was a living among us. And
Yeah.
I was like blown away. I was like, he's an Adventist pastor and he uses that. What the, like, legitly, I was like,
Yeah.
I was so surprised because like I've never met an Adventist pastor using that theory,
Right. Right.
That's what interests me even more in that class. So I started to get more involved, and then I started getting involved with Sabbath school in the university's church.
Mm-hmm.
So then it came to a point where I just started like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, and then of course it came to a point where I met Alicia.
Right.
Alicia, and we went to a meeting where it was a meeting of people who were students who are LGBTQIA and allies. Unfortunately, it was just students there because we did like I think the meeting was also for people who were professors, but I didn't think there weren't no professors there. There were just students and then
Right.
some people that were involved in the church. So there were some people there that I didn't think that they were affirming, but I learned that they were. I was like, what?
That's great.
Like, wow. Like they're a part of the church and they're affirming what? So yeah, I had the experience with Alicia. We talked, and she gave me a copy of her book.
Right.
And I was just, I read a little bit of it, and I just read her experience about being Adventist, being growing up Adventist, being a pastor, and identifying as bisexual. I really resonated with her because even before I met her, I heard of her because I mean a big deal when she came out.
Right.
Like, it was a very big deal. So, and that it was one of the subjects that we did talk about in the meetings of coming out ministries. We did talk about Alita and how she came out and she wrote a book about LGBTQI. So that's how I learned about the book.
Interesting, but not in a positive way.
Yeah. So that's how I learned about her. I researched her and I just identified with her because she grew up Adventist. And she just like I really identified with her because she grew up Adventist and she identified as bisexual. So it was just the white version of me.
Great. Cool.
The white version of me. And so yeah.
Nice.
And like
nice.
I did talk to her and we had a conversation. She asked me my experience about my connection with Adventism and me identifying as bisexual and trans. Basically. And then of course after that meeting I felt a responsibility to inform my professors and the chair of theology that I was bisexual. I didn't tell them that I was trans. I just told them that. Well, I did open up that I was having thoughts of, not identifying with my gender, but I just came out to them as bisexual. And they told me, we have no problem with you continuing your studies as long as you don't practice that lifestyle. We have to uphold the teachings of the church.
Yeah. Wow.
So, after that, my mental health just went to the crapper. I mean,
Yeah.
I was severely depressed to the point where I think we had a conversation when I was still at Southwestern.
Yeah.
That was one of the days where my suicidal thoughts were at the point where I poured out that day. Like after our conversation that day, I poured out my blood pressure pills because I used to have problems with blood pressure, but I still had the pills. I remember after our conversation, I poured the pills on my hand and I was like, Serenity, it's right there. You want to die is right there. You have that choice. But do you actually want to do this?
Right.
So that's when, by the grace of God, I didn't act on my feelings. And I just,
Very thankful you didn't.
yeah, I continued the rest of the semester just fighting my thoughts. And it came to a where, like, I legitly, like I told you that time that we video chatted, I had to change more than once because I felt like I was dressing too feminine and I didn't want the other students to catch on.
Right.
And then also it came to a point where I was wearing a hairband around my wrist, which I learned in conversion therapy. And each time that I had a sexual thought towards the same sex, I would snap it. And it came to a point where it just got really red and really obvious. And someone got concerned and reported me to the mental health counselor on campus. And I already had, sessions with her, with the mental health counselor on campus. And she knows me. And and she said, I could not imagine. I just know I don't know how to help you. Like, I want to help you. I just don't understand how it feels to not identify with the sex that you were assigned with birth. Like, I sympathize with you and I affirm you because I am a Seventh-day Adventist as well, but I'm affirming. But I just don't know how to help you. I just don't know what to say.
Wow. So on campus, there was really no one that was equipped to help you or give you what you were needing on an Adventist.
Well, I mean, there was people like a part of the group who are, I think people know that they're gay, or maybe they don't know, or just pretend to be stupid. But they would help me. It's just that they're not mental health.
Right. Right.
But yeah, like Southwestern didn't have anybody who is trained to deal with people like me.
Wow. Yeah. I'm glad you survived that chapter. And
it was a miracle. It is a miracle because it was just by the grace of God that I did not commit suicide.
Yeah. So you're currently, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, legitly, like, it was the power of God that basically was involved in my life that I did not commit suicide.
Yeah. And you're not the only one that feels this way or is in this space. There are tons of Adventists who the Adventist Church doesn't have the resources or can't understand, and that's very sad.
No, it's that some of, especially here in Texas, in San Antonio, they know about it. They know about it and they know everything. But they just say, oh, yeah, that's an issue, but it does not go on in our church. You just
denial.
They just turn a blind eye on it. And unfortunately, I have no doubt, and especially in Cynic Hills Christian Academy, I have no doubt there's people like us at that academy. I have no doubt. And they're just suffering in silence because there is no one in our church who has the courage to say, you know what, the hate stops here.
Yeah. It's the lack of courage to be the first one to step forward and say, hey, this has to stop. Exactly. I've run up a lot of time with you, and I hope that we can do another podcast in the future and say, hey, this is the next step for Serenity. This is where Serenity is at now. But you're taking a semester off from Southwestern, is that right?
Yes, because like I said, since I was severely depressed and suicidal, I had a conversation with my psych team, and they said, yes, you're not mentally stable to be in college. I am concerned for your personal safety, and I believe that you should finish out the fall semester and continue the spring semester online, because you're not mentally stable. You're not only you have severe PTSD, you're just not in the mental state to be in school, let alone to work, because
right,
you're just not there.
Yeah. How are you today? Are you doing better? Feeling like
By
the
the grace
pressure
of
is
God,
a little bit off?
yes. By the grace of God, I'm feeling a lot better, a lot happier,
Good.
a lot now that I've moved out and that out of my parents' house. Yes, my parents don't exactly agree, but we just don't talk. Well, me and my mom just don't talk about it. We just we don't talk about it. With my dad, it's more like he's trying to convince himself that I have multiple personality disorder or something, to convince himself that this is not me.
Right. But you still have a relationship with them. You're still talking. And
relations, decent.
Okay. Yeah. And you know that you have your kinship family?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah, that's important. And you have some kinship allies and friends right there in San Antonio who love and care for you. So don't forget that. And reach out whenever, like you did, when you were at Southwestern and you reached out to me. Do that.
One thing that I would like to share.
Yeah.
You know Nancy, right? Nancy, she's trying to open a chapter of
She's
SDA.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. So she was my teacher in Saja. She was one of the teachers there in Saja. And I want to share this because it was God himself trying to show himself through her. So after I left Saja, I haven't seen Nancy in like years. And I haven't seen her in years because Saja already closed down because they didn't have funds anymore. And then I haven't heard in years. When I was still transitioning, and this is before I got serotonin syndrome, I was in the partial program at Laurel Ridge. Is a program that has group therapy all day until 3:00. And I was leaving the common room where we have lunch and stuff. And I was going somewhere because we're having art therapy in there. And I think I was going to the bathroom or something. And I was leaving there and I saw Nancy and she was walking. And I was like, I know who that is. I think I know who that is. And I went up to her and I was like, Miss Nancy. And back then I had longer hair. And of course I was wearing makeup and girls' clothes. And she did not recognize me, of course. She did not recognize me. And she was like, do I know you? I'm like, it's me, Miss Nancy, it's me. And she was like, me who? And I was like, it's me, Peter. And she was like, oh. She surprised. And then I was expecting her not to be affirming. I legitimately expected that. But I was so surprised to learn that she was affirming 100%. And not only a person who knows me from childhood, but someone who was active in the church that I grew up in and the local churches here in San Antonio she was active in.
Mhm.
She let me know that she loved me and cared about me and accepted me just for who I am.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was just blown away. Blown away.
Yeah. No, she's a beautiful, beautiful lady. Yeah. And yeah. Anyway, cool. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
do you have any final words for people who are coming out either as gay, as trans, as bi, whatever, and have an Adventist background? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, do not give up hope, because God loves you just the way you are. So I know it's hard. I know it's hard to come to terms with, the beliefs that we were raised with, and come to terms with who we are. But the first step of finding serenity, and that's what I picked the name Serenity, because it means peace, acceptance.
Beautiful.
Achieving serenity is accepting who you are for who you are. So the first step is accepting who you are, because God already accepted you from the beginning. Because God has created, it says that, the Bible says that God knew us when even before he created us in our mother's womb. So if God knew us before he even created us in our mother's womb, he had to know that we would be this way.
And
if it was so wrong for us to be this way, why would he let us be this way?
Yeah, that wouldn't be a loving God.
Yes, that would not be a loving God. And I would not be studying to be a pastor if that was God.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
for people who are coming out, especially teens,
Mhm.
know that you are loved, that you're accepted, not only by God, by a church called SDA Kinship that will support you and love you just the way you are. And they, not only them, but also by me, who will maybe be a pastor, and know that if I am a pastor of a church, that you will be welcome with open arms.
Exactly. Amen. Thank you so much, Serenity. I can see your loving heart. I can feel it. And you truly are a pastor, whether you have the schooling behind you or ahead of you or whatever. But I thank you very much. And, mental health, mental wellness, mental awareness is a very real issue within our church. And especially in our community, where people tell you that you can't be who you are. And the church tells us that. And so we deal with it the best way we can, but we need to be more aware of mental wellness and create a safe space for us to work on that. So thank you. We're going to check in with you later and see how your journey is continuing. I wish you many blessings, and remember that God loves you unconditionally.
Thank you.
So thanks again, everyone who was listening. And if you didn't catch the first broadcast, and this is part 2, go back and listen to part 1 of our interview with Serenity. It's beautiful. And again, thanks for sharing with us. We hope that today's podcast was interesting and has given our listeners something to think about. Seventh-day Adventist Kinship is the only LGBTQIA+ affirming community for current and former Adventists. We welcome not only the Rainbow Alphabet members, but also the parents and family members who want to learn more about how to support their loved ones, as well as the allies who stand with us and make a difference in our church and our world. You can check us out on the web, sdakinship.org, and you can follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at SDA Kinship. If you have any questions or comments or something you want me to pass on to Serenity, I'm happy to do that. You can email me, info@sdakinship.org. And we look forward to having you with us on the next podcast. Just remember that God does love you unconditionally, and there's no change involved. And be careful of the people who say you do have to change, because they don't have your best interest at heart. So thanks, Serenity. And with that, we'll close for today.
Okay.